So finally, all of these square and squares are done. I will admit I had to walk away. And then it made me realize maybe that's why I walked away from the project to begin with. It's a lot of repetitive, right? To accomplish these blocks, it was 2.5-inch squares over and over and over again. And I realized that it wasn't satisfying to be sewing these. I guess, something that gives me completion a little faster. But I am pushing through because I need to finish this box before I can pull out another one. I've started the sashing in between my blocks. And then I have my sashings that go in between my rows. I am going to go ahead and just use solids for all those cornerstones and get moving and grooving. I did want to come in here and talk about such long strips of getting put onto rows of these blocks. I will admit, I don't sash often. I also don't border things often. Me and long straight lines just aren't friends. But what I have learned is if I do them, I need to be careful, and I need to pen, and I need to pay attention. So I just wanted to pop on here and just talk about that real quickly. In this situation, my sashing is solid, has that one cornerstone. My block has multiple seams, and they're on the bias. So I'm actually going to put the sashing on the bottom. I'm going to bring the block, don't mind all the strings there. I'm going to bring the block to the top side. I'm going to come to this edge. I'm going to start there. I'm going to just go ahead and pin that. I'm going to come to this first intersection at the cornerstones. I'll go ahead and nest those seams. I actually go in on one side. I do come out on the other. Now that leaves that 12 inches. I don't want to stretch and pull these biases. I don't feel that I need to pin each and every one, but I am going to go ahead here in the center and give that a pin. And then I'll just pay attention and focus while I'm sewing, not to pull and stretch that. If something like this is new to you with all those bias edges and all of those seams, by all means, start off by pinning each one until you get comfortable. We all have different levels of what we can and can't do. And putting sashing and putting borders on is just something that I'm not good at. So I would even, if you need to, go ahead and do that. Once I get started, if I find that the first one is kind of wonky, I might actually go ahead and just pin all of them. So I pinned this next cornerstone part. I'm going to come to this guy and pin him into place. And then I'll find that center again and hold him still. Then when I go to sew, I'll actually be starting from this end down here, using that straight sashing as the bottom. That's what the feed dogs are going to be grabbing onto. I want to be able to see all these intersections so that I can control them at the foot, that they don't get flipped and flopped over. Also wanted to point out that even here, when I added this sashing, I did the same thing. I pinned on the bottom, pinned on the top, pinned in the center, and then made sure that that flat sashing was what was underneath, on the bottom side. And that way, as I sewed across here, I could control those intersections. It is time consuming. it does add more length to the project being completed, but in something like this with with so many seams and so many intersections and so many bias cuts, it pays off, in my opinion, to go ahead and give that focus some attention, to go ahead and add that time to the project. That way down the road, I won't get frustrated. That way down the road, I don't have to unpick something. That way, you know, down the road, one of those rows is not off track, and then you go to attach it to another row and they just aren't matching up anymore. As beginners, I didn't know this, and I do remember coming across quilts at this phase and had no idea what I was doing, and didn't pin and didn't keep those intersections up, and then, you know, get halfway through that quilt and it's wonky, and then you get frustrated and then you throw it in the corner. And so somehow along the way, I must have either missed this or I was just never taught this. I don't know. I don't know what went wrong back then. But now, you know, this to me is key in having my completed top nice and on track, I guess you would say. All of the first round of borders are complete. They are, I was very surprised. They came out exactly as the measurement in the book asked me to cut them. So now that I've done top, bottom, left, and right, up next is, you know, hold on, let's see here. Up next is these guys. Going into 16 and 15 to create the next round of borders. And then it still has us doing another round of solid black, which is a good idea not to have all these open seams on that edge. So slow and steady is winning this race with this quilt. So my next round of borders is complete. It is those square and a square with those tons and tons and tons of sewing flip corners. I was not happy. It took me days. I had to walk away. I did press them all going into one direction. That way when I put them on the quilt, I'll be able to, hold on a second. I had already placed it at the sewing machine. When I went ahead and pinned it down, I did it so that those seams would be going in the same direction, that I can just make sure they're not getting flipped, you know, at the sewing machine. I did the two sides as directed. Once I'm done with that, I'll put these two sides on. And then once I'm done with that, I'll do one final border of this solid black, and we will call it a day. And pictured here is the final quilt top on my living room floor. I could not get the whole thing into one single picture. It is coming out to be 72 by 85 and a half. Nice size for sure. I'm very happy with how this came out. I am so glad that I pulled this project box and that I was able to get it completed in the month of February. And so I am going to go on the hunt for project box number 3 for March. I hope you stick around and follow along with the next one. Thanks so much for watching. A comment, a like, a subscribe, and a share are always greatly appreciated.